Hey everybody, this is Park Melton. So today, this video is pretty simple. I'm going to do my 10 favorite albums from age 12. So the reason why I chose age 12 is a couple reasons. One time I heard or read, don't quite remember where, that your music taste at age of 12 kind of shapes your music taste from there on out. I thought that was kind of absurd when I heard it for the first time because I think of myself as pretty eclectic. But I figured I'd do the list and kind of give my thoughts on that whole concept at the end. Age 12, for me, this was the year 2003. I also wanted to do this age because it was pretty tumultuous, both the world at large and also just, moving into my teen years, kind of figuring out who I am and maybe breaking away from my parents' influence a little bit musically. So I just thought it was kind of an interesting time period. But let's go ahead and get into it. So, number 10, by the way, these are in an order, but not really in order that I can explain without looking like a crazy person. So, wouldn't necessarily say that number 1 was my favorite album when I was 12 because it was a little wishy-washy, but anyway. Number 10 would be Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water. This is just a really beautiful album. I don't think there's any tracks on it I dislike. Some are obviously stronger than others. My parents, didn't really listen to a whole lot of folk, but Simon and Garfunkel was definitely a staple in our house as kids. I think the album holds up great. I don't think that it's my favorite Simon and Garfunkel album now. Probably lean more towards their debut, but still a very beautiful album. I still listen to it. Number 9, I've got Dizzy Up the Girl by the Goo Goo Dolls. This came out in 1998, so sort of contemporary for me at age 12. I think this is a pretty good album. It's definitely a product of its time. Songwriting is nice. I like the dual vocalist thing, and I like that there's kind of a little bit of variety in the kind of song. I know the whole post-grunge thing, people were trying to find a sound that worked for them, and Goo Goo Dolls, it took them a little while to find their footing, maybe, I guess you could say, but, Dizzy Up the Girl it's a really good album. I don't know that I would say that I listen to it regularly now. When I listen to it, I like it, but, good album. Number 8, kind of in the same grain as the last one, I got Matchbox 20, Yourself or Someone Like You. Came out in 1996. I guess, when this album came out, it didn't really get any traction for a little while. But when it did, it ended up being a pretty popular album. Rob Thomas's voice, I always thought was pretty distinctive. Sounds like he should be singing country, but decided to do his, alternative rock, pop rock thing. I really like it. I think this album holds up pretty well considering where Rob Thomas went in his career later, and Matchbox 20 also. I think Hang on the album is kind of underappreciated. I like all the hits off of it. Solid album. Number 7, I've got Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Into the Great Wide Open. This came out in 1991, so not exactly contemporary anymore. When I was 12, something about this album, it just really stuck with me. I think, I've always really enjoyed Tom Petty, but this one, something like probably just its presence in my life more than anything is why I hold it in such high regard, because, looking back now, it probably isn't really one of Tom Petty's best albums, but it's solid. Two Gunslingers, love that song. All or Nothing, great song. Title track, it's good. I feel like it's not very deep as far as what Tom Petty's capable of, but it's a cute song. Like I said, I don't know that it holds up with Tom Petty's best albums, but I still like it. When I listen to it, it makes me just feel good. King's Highway, also a great song off that album. Number 6, I've got Beatles 1. This is the one with the red cover and the big yellow one on it. Had all of their number 1 hits. This was kind of my first foray into the Beatles. They released it in 2000, and it's sold phenomenally well. I feel like that's kind of to be expected. The Beatles have a lot of staying power. I still enjoy the Beatles a lot now. I'd say that this CD kind of sticks out to me. I've got some pretty distinct memories. One of them in particular, the whole family is just sitting around the living room. We listen to a lot of music as a family, not necessarily like active listening, but if we're doing chores or maybe like playing a board game or something, we put some music on as background music. For whatever reason, when this came out, maybe my mom was really excited about it, or my dad. Anyway, we just sat down and listened to it as a family, and every time a new track would start, my mom and dad would kind of race to say what the track was, which it's just like a really vivid memory, a really positive memory. And, at age 12, 10, 11, around those years, it kind of seems like the world is your oyster, My upbringing it was good, it was bad, it's like anybody's. After age 12, things got a little bit more rocky, so this was kind of like the end of the age of innocence or whatever. But it's nice that I have really positive memories from that time period to look back on because of the less positive stuff that came later. And the Beatles have always been kind of a nostalgic band in that way for me. Obviously, too young to have grown up with them when they were big, but they've always been a household name. I think they're a great band. I think it's a great album. These days, don't really do compilations too much. I prefer to listen to music in the context of the album, as the artist intended, more or less. So, yeah, number 5, pretty monumental album for a lot of people, is Pink Floyd's The Wall. Came out in 1979. Pink Floyd was about to implode, so to speak. This album is it's really heavy thematically, maybe too heavy for what I should have been listening to at that age, because my taste did end up getting pretty dark. Not that that's a bad thing necessarily, but I think Pink Floyd kind of like opened the door for that a little bit. The Wall isn't really at the top of my list for Pink Floyd these days. I think it's ambitious, I know that's intentional. I think they reach their concept more concisely on other albums. I really love Animals, Dark Side of the Moon. The Wall, it's kind of hard to listen to. It's really emotional. You have to pay attention. There's a lot of, it's an album that requires a lot of focus, and it's emotionally jarring at times. Definitely think that it's anybody who becomes a fan of progressive rock music, it's, kind of required reading, so to speak. Really great album. Definitely very heavy and heady, as they say. Love it. Number 4 is Jewel's Pieces of You. This is another album that wasn't particularly popular when it came out. Also, the critics just kind of destroyed it, called it naive and like the worst of what folk music had to offer at the time, that kind of thing. I think the naivety of the album contributes a lot to its charm. I think for a debut album, you have to keep your expectations pretty low as far as things like naivety are concerned. Not everybody's King Crimson, but it's beautiful. if I have I got a little sauce in me, this album will make me cry like a baby. I know the words to almost every song on it. I've worn it out as a kid, as an adult. This is the kind of album that, I wouldn't talk to my friends about at the time. Still had that kind of macho 12-year-old thing. I didn't really, I was definitely more prone to pressure. But, so I wouldn't be like, hey, have you guys listened to Pieces of You by Jewel to my buddies? Nowadays, that kind of thing, I think it's silly that I would ever have hang-ups about it, but, you don't really have any control of that kind of thing until you do. You gotta learn it, that you can discard parts of yourself that aren't positive. But, honestly, I couldn't even tell you what my favorite song on it is. You Were Meant For Me, just so beautiful. Foolish Games, so beautiful. Obviously, those are the hits. But Adrian, since I'm sensitive, man, it's a really good album. Man, I love it so much. 3, Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory came out in 2000. This was a really big album for me. This was kind of me breaking away from my parents' influence more or less completely. This isn't something that either my parents enjoyed or, would even give the time of day to. I wouldn't really consider myself a nu metal fan per se, but Linkin Park's, their style, it's different, This album is angsty. I was starting to come into that kind of teenage rebellion, angsty period, or as much as I did go through. I don't really think I was too bad, but I think it's amazing. I still really enjoy this album. These days I would probably say that I prefer Meteora over Hybrid Theory. I think it's a little more mature, a little more realized, but Hybrid Theory is still beautiful. It was pretty heavy for me at the time. I listened to things like, Led Zeppelin and, like radio, hard rock, like Black Sabbath, radio stuff, that kind of thing. But I didn't really listen to anything that would be called metal. My dad wasn't into it, and he shaped a lot of my early music taste. So this, like I said, this was kind of me breaking away from that a little bit. Also, didn't really listen to a lot of rap. It was all over the radio at this time, but it wasn't really my thing. So it was kind of mind-opening a little bit for me in that regard. Kind of a silly story about this album. In my 5th grade talent show, that was the year this album came out, 2000, 2001. So it was huge, on alternative rock radio, from mainstream rock radio, whatever. So several kids wanted to sing In the End for the talent show, myself included, and music teacher was like, well, we're not going to have multiple performances of the same song, so you guys are just going to sing together. So 3 or 4 of us got up and sang In the End collectively. I'm sure it was absolutely terrible. I was very nervous, not really a performative person per se. I had to kind of force myself into that later on in life. It was funny. It's funny now. At the time, I didn't think it was funny. I thought it was incredibly nerve-wracking. The talent show was emotionally jarring for 5th grade me. But I love this. Hybrid Theory is actually the first CD I ever bought with my own money. Wore it out, had to buy it again. I think actually 2 more times, because I lost it in moves or what, just life happens. I love it. Haven't gotten it on vinyl. Going to. I saw it in the store not too long ago. Great album. Favorite song? Points of Authority, maybe. Crawling. I like every song on it. I think it holds up pretty well considering how bad nu metal would get. So yeah, great album from a great band. Number 2, Rage Against the Machine. Battle of Los Angeles. This obviously is a step further than Hybrid Theory as far as the rap aspect and the hardness of it. I heard Rage Against the Machine in a way that's very typical of the time. So in the olden days, MTV did play music. There was VH1, and there was another channel that if you had fancy TV, you had access to. It was called Fuse. Fuse leaned a little bit more towards rock and whatever was happening in that general vein, as opposed to MTV, which was leaning more towards R&B and girl groups and rap and that kind of thing. At this time, I'm talking about like basically 1999 to 2003 or so. So I don't know. I liked Fuse the most. I watched it the most. When I heard Rage Against the Machine for the first time, it was Sleep Now in the Fire. It was a very vivid moment for me. I was just watching music videos on Fuse, just kind of expanding my horizons, I guess, or whatever. When the song started, immediately I remember thinking, I've never heard anything like this. What is happening right now? Music videos and the song itself is very political. Never heard any band that was so kind of upfront with their message. Really left an impact on me. This was the very early days of YouTube. I remember listening to the rest of the album on YouTube. YouTube was pretty reliable about finding music on it. I know people were using it for this kind of stuff and streaming back then, but I was pretty much using it exclusively for music videos. Didn't really do any exploration at that time. So listened to the whole album. Absolutely loved it. Blown away. I think for me, other than what's in the number one spot, this was one of the most watershed moments of me listening to music. I heard it and I just didn't know that people made music like that. It was aggressive. It was poignant to me. It just really had a profound impact on me. Tom Morello is just an astonishing guitarist. Sleep Now in the Fire has to be the standout track for me just because I have this emotional tie to it because, like I said, it was just such a vivid moment. I just remember being glued to the TV and just blown away. In my number one spot, I have Anima by Tool, came out in 1996. So my sister had a lot of friends that were into music, or, when I say music that I didn't listen to, what I mean is stuff that wasn't played on the radio or in the house. My dad's taste was pretty narrow, my mom's taste maybe even more so. So breaking away from that had to come from external sources, and this was the day of mixed CDs, so my sister would bring these mixed CDs home. Heard a lot of music for the first time this way. She brought home a CD that had all of Anima and then a few other random tracks. I know Prison Sex was on it, Schism, maybe Sober was definitely on it. So, just a smattering of other songs, but the entirety of Anima, once again, it was just one of those things where I was I didn't know that people made music like this, and I guess, I'm a big Tool fan now, so this might be kind of a Tool fan, Tool thing to say, Tool as in douchebag, but I don't really think anybody else sounds quite like Tool, and it really, for that reason, I was really drawn to it. Obviously, they've got their sort of proggy influence, and it's not quite a concept album, but definitely an album with some theme to it. So the whole California falling into the ocean, the imagery of that, it had a really intense appeal to me for whatever reason, because it is just a cataclysmic graphic thing, and it was intriguing to me. 46 and 2, when I heard that bass line, like I said, I just never heard anything like it. It just really, it had an intense impact on me. Tool is my favorite band for a long time, still definitely way up there. usually when people ask me my favorite band, I'll say Tool, but it's kind of an arbitrary thing because my taste changes so frequently. But yeah, it wasn't until I think Lateralis was already out. It had to have been because I know Schism was on that CD, but it took me longer to listen to Lateralis for whatever reason. It has definitely surpassed Anima as my favorite Tool album, but because I had access to all of Anima easily, I wore it out, and I loved it, and I showed it to all my friends. I was like, you need to listen to this. This is amazing. So yeah, that's my top 10. There were, a lot of other albums that I was listening to that, had a lesser impact. Led Zeppelin's BBC Sessions, I remember listening to that a lot. Falco's Greatest Hits got a lot of play, and I remember really enjoying it. It's kind of silly now. But to return to the theme mentioned at the beginning of the video, after I made this list and thought about it, yeah, there's a pretty broad representation. My taste now probably leans more towards prog and folk and, grunge. I like a lot of music. That's probably kind of what I gravitate the most towards, but I listen to everything. And a lot of that's on here, folk is represented, prog is represented, grunge much less so, kind of maybe post-grunge, I guess, a little bit, but I didn't really have access to grunge as a kid. I guess it was on the radio, but I didn't really pay any attention to it. I remember being aware of Nirvana and Pearl Jam, but I really don't think I listened to Alice in Chains or Soundgarden until much later, and ended up liking them considerably more. But I just didn't have access, didn't hear it, or didn't pay attention to it one way or the other. So yeah, that's it. That's my top 10 for age 12. I'll probably do age 18 and whatever age I am now later on, and kind of compare and contrast a little bit. But thanks for watching. If you feel like it, subscribe, like, whatever, share it with your friends. I'd appreciate it. Take it easy. Thanks.